conservatives have, for the last couple decades, been averse to history. They don't like, they just simply do not like history. For obvious reasons, history does have a liberal slant to it. Even when you analyze historical events, you say that they're bad. That irks conservatives more than anything because of the idea of American exceptionalism, which is a lie, obviously. So when you talk about like Japanese internment, when you talk about slavery, and you say that it was bad, they're like, oh well. Think of the times, man. Think of the times, and it's like, okay, we can have that discussion about the context of a given era, but the point of history is to analyze it from a perspective of today. It's to look back and say why something was wrong, or perhaps why something was even good. I know, talking about history of the United States of America, there isn't much that you can say is good. I think the American Revolution was a good thing. Why was that good? It was a giant middle finger to the colonial power that was Great Britain. It was the 13 colonies fighting for their independence against the colonial power. That is and will forever be a good thing. Slavery, bad. Why was slavery bad? Very simple. People are not property. But yet conservatives hear this and they're like, oh, actually, being a slave is better than being dead. This is a very famous PragerU clip when they were discussing Christopher Columbus, and they were trying to normalize slavery because back then it was normal. And yes, slavery up until like the 1700s, I'm talking about globally, was normal. But here's the thing, it's still bad. It was bad then, and it's bad now. Something can be bad even if society deems it to be good. Where am I going with all this? Well, you guys may remember Donald Trump cut all of the funding for NPR and PBS. For virtually every public broadcasting corporation, all of their federal dollars got ripped away from them. In the aftermath of this, the White House is looking at potential replacements for PBS. PBS, I'm sure you guys know, is basically just a free educational network. It is a non-biased television channel that serves to educate its viewer base. The potential replacement is PragerU, a right-wing propaganda organization founded by Dennis Prager that has the specific goal of indoctrinating children. This is horrible for many reasons. One, because it's entirely hypocritical to what conservatives say. Oh, it's the liberals who are indoctrinating children by making them believe that it's okay to be gay. Meanwhile, you have Dennis Prager, who believes in spousal rape, saying ridiculous shit about slavery. Indoctrination is the only way for conservatism to persist. Because if you take a normal person with critical thinking skills, they will look at every aspect of conservatism and say to themselves, this is like really gross. Why would anybody think this? Nobody with a fucking functioning brain is going to think that being a slave is better than being dead. Anyway, this is courtesy of the Grigio, PBS potential replacement network says slavery was no big deal in video. The right-wing media company that may be Trump's pick to overtake traditional public broadcasting networks has a video where a cartoon of Christopher Columbus minimizes slavery. A clip circulating on the web from far-right media company PragerU, which the Trump administration has partnered with, suggests slavery was no big deal. PragerU is a nonprofit media company and right-wing propaganda platform co-founded by conservative talk show host Dennis Prager, who admitted the goal of the program is to indoctrinate children. In a clip from a PragerU show that was shared by comedian D.L. Hewley on Instagram, a cartoon version of Christopher Columbus downplays and justifies the practice of slavery by saying it's, quote, as old as time and has taken place in every corner of the world.
Time and has taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? Before you judge, you must ask yourself, what did the culture and society of the time treat as no big deal?
Why did they give him a Russian accent? He doesn't sound like he's fucking Italian or Spanish. He sounds Russian. Anyway, this is crazy because slavery is bad, dude. I don't know, like there have been countries and civilizations for millennia have murdered people. Does that mean that murder is not a big deal? No, murder is a big deal. You should be fucking killing people. Very much like how you shouldn't be stripping people of their human rights and turning them into property. I don't give a fuck about what societies thought of slavery at the time. It was still wrong. It is still condemnable. Additionally, it's really rich saying this because even if we do want to have like, oh God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Even if we do want to have a conversation about slavery, inevitably we get to slavery in the United States, which was far and away the most horrific version of slavery. Chattel slavery literally stripped African Americans or stripped black people of all of their rights, every single one of them, and turned them into property. That previously was not the norm. That was not the norm. But even then, slavery in every form, in every way, in every shape, done by every civilization it's just bad, dude. We don't have to think about what the cultures of the time thought. Like, humans were fucking way more barbaric back in the day. And that's saying something, considering how barbarism is still rampant in our society. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? The clip says, before you judge, you must ask yourself, what did the culture and society of the time treat as no big deal? Despite its look resembling a normal broadcasting channel for kids, the messaging of PragerU shows have a specific purpose. Its short, buzzy explainer videos have been called out for denying Native American history. One video on Indigenous Peoples Day saying that it is a holiday made to make Americans feel guilt, denying climate change, and being Islamophobic. Let's go ahead. Let's play the hits, guys. Let's see what PragerU is.
Thanksgiving.
Oh my
Independence
fuck,
Day. Memorial
dude.
Day. Holidays are a great.
Steven Crowder. Let's do it, boys and girls. Let's dive into some of the propaganda.
Time to riddle Americans with needless oppressive guilt. But the one that stands head and shoulders above the rest is Columbus Day. The day where progressives indoctrinate your children into believing Columbus to be Satan incarnate, the USA to be his evil spawn, and the Native Americans to be pacifists. And so now we have Indigenous Peoples Day. Or as it would have been named 30 years ago, Aboriginals Day. Or as it would have been named 10 or 15 years ago, Native Americans Day. Or as it could be named tomorrow in Canada, First Nation Peoples Day. Feeling the urge to self-inflict grievous bodily harm yet? That's only natural because the whole charade has become an exercise in hating Western civilization, which is really just an exercise in hating yourself. First, as far as Columbus goes...
This is projection. Anyone who said, or anyone who brings this up, anyone who claims guilt when talking about history is a fucking weenie. Straight up. We're having a discussion about historical events. You have no reason to feel guilt. Did you perpetuate Native American genocide? No. No. Like, this is the same shit when people felt guilty about slavery. Again, you're not the one perpetuating these atrocities. It is, however, up to you to understand why these atrocities are that, why they are atrocities. Christopher Columbus was a despicable fucking human being. He was also a dumbass. He thought he landed in India when in fact he landed in Hispaniola. And also he was a fucking freak. The only reason that he set foot to the new world, that he set sail to the new world, was to try to fuck the Queen of Spain. But even then, he is a truly disgusting human being for the fact that, yeah, he helped play a role in the Native American genocide, whether that was directly with, directly killing them or indirectly killing them. Directly is, combat. Indirectly would be like smallpox disease, things of that nature.
The guy deserves some credit. Right? Flawed, to be sure. But he was the greatest navigator of his age, the first person to cross the Atlantic from the continent of Europe, and he did so without any maps and only 3 small ships.
Dude, he didn't even know what the fucking world looked like. He was an idiot. Like, what? Why do we have to glaze Christopher Columbus?
You can name them, by the way, comment below, as I'm sure your professor can't. But your professor probably has taught you the tale of Columbus as a villain, usually as a starting off point to indict the United States as a whole, often relying on a few key myths and some pivotal lies by omission. So, to start with, I'll bet that you probably believe Columbus and other European settlers to simply have committed mass genocide against Native Americans. Sorry, indigenous. But here's the truth. While there were many examples of brutal warfare between Europeans and Native Americans, neither side actually committed genocide. In fact, there was never an outright policy of Indian extermination.
Just so we're clear, I think the estimated number is 100 million indigenous people were killed all throughout the Americas by the colonizers. The idea that a genocide can only occur when its policy is fucking stupid. That's dumb. That's not how that works. Even then, the definition of genocide is the erasing of an entire culture. It doesn't have to be policy. If you manage to exterminate 90% of the population by way of disease, armed conflict, you're committing a genocide.
The Native Americans were mostly wiped out through infectious diseases that the settlers had inadvertently brought with them. Of the estimated 250,000 natives in Hispaniola, Columbus's first
And
stop.
again, why were they coming to the New World? Oh, that's right, because they wanted to get fucking rich. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to come to the Americas, but they wanted to amass massive. They wanted to accrue ridiculous fortune.
In the Americas in 1492, new infectious diseases wiped out a staggering 95% of their population by 1517. As far as genocide by violence, you can look at any historical account of even the most one-sided battles and find that they were still just that, battles. Take Wounded Knee, although hundreds of years later, I only bring it up because I know that if I don't, you will. It's become ubiquitous with the idea of Native American genocide. After all, there were 150 to 350 Aboriginals killed or wounded. That's terrible. But there were also 25 American soldiers killed and 39 wounded. That's not genocide. That's a one-sided beatdown with Old Glory wielding a hammer. And sometimes...
This is brain rot. This is brain rot. Like, he just jumped ahead 400 years. And he refuses to wrestle with the fact that, once again, the Native Americans were the oppressed party in this instance. Their land was being taken away from them, and they were merely fighting back. These people fundamentally misrepresent history. They misrepresent definitions. And it's dangerous because, people believe this slop.
Times the massacres...
But also, this only works on children, or it only works on people that have a baby brain. I'm 28 years old, soon to be 29. And it's not even a fucking mental exercise for me to combat these points.
Went the other direction. See the Apaches for reference, or the Comanches, or a dozen or so other tribes. So the natives often gave as good as they got. Not exactly the way genocide usually tends to work.
Not true
Here's
at all.
Another thing I bet you've been made to believe. That many Native Americans, American Indians, I don't know what, take your pick, lived in harmony with the environment until Columbus arrived, and European settlers destroyed the land with their evil technology. Truth, not only did the natives brutally take out people, but they took out entire forests and hunted species to extinction. Squatting Bear and his First Nation buddies weren't hopping...
This is not correct. Did native tribes have skirmishes with one another? Yes, they did. But also all throughout North America, there were federations formed by tribes living in what are now different states. Currently in New York State, now New York State, there was a federation there. I think it was 5 or 6 tribes came together. These tribes had robust democracies. They had thriving societies. They hunted animals to extinction. I don't know if that doesn't even make sense. But even when the Native American hunted animals, they had such reverence for the natural world that they felt it was disrespectful not to utilize every part of the animal that they killed. This is the infantilization of Native Americans is uber disgusting. And it is something that happens all the time. It is very, I don't know, like I guess it's considered racist, but the to think that Native Americans were less civilized than the white man is a racist talking point, even though historians have debunked this repeatedly.
Into kayaks to block whaling ships, probably because they were too busy killing seals to waterproof their kayaks. You also probably believe that the Native American, two-spirited First Nation something or other culture was a beautiful, pantheistic one.
Yeah, he's also being racist here. Just call them Native Americans. You can even call them American Indians. Like, they don't care. You don't have to be a fucking snob about it. Jesus Christ.
Peace. The truth is, not so much. When Columbus arrived, the islands were inhabited by two main tribes.
Also, Europe has literally been at war for like 3,000 years. Yeah, human beings are violent. Unfortunately, human beings are violent. But you can't try to paint Native Americans as savages for battling one another when, again, Europeans have done the same fucking thing. And people all over the world have done the same fucking thing.
The Arawaks, who were passive and friendly, and the Caribs, who were vicious cannibals. The Arawaks actually lived in fear of the Caribs for, you guessed it, the reasons being that they hunted them down to enslave them and eat them. Yes, eat them. Ironically, we get the name Caribbean Islands from those famous people eaters. The only way settlers were able to conquer this land was through the help of Native Americans who teamed up with them to settle the score with other tribes who were even bigger jerks than they were. That's not even to mention the populations in Central and South America famous for ritual human sacrifice. You think Cortez was able to command and conquer with only 500 or so conquistadors? Of course not. It took 50,000 screaming, angry allied natives who'd had it up to here with being tortured, enslaved, and forced to carry gold for the other native Aztecs. At some point, they decided to roll the dice and go with the guys sporting funny beards and metal hats. None of this is to say that the early settlers were perfect, or that they didn't carry out their fair share of pretty scummy stuff, but to use America's mistakes as the brush with which to paint the entirety of its history while completely ignoring the indigenous lifestyle of barbarism and borderline evil is inaccurate at best.
Barbarism and borderline evil of the Native American lifestyle. I love unbiased historical analysis. Nobody is saying that the United States is an evil nation based off of one singular instance. When I say that the institutions of the United States are evil or racist, it is from hundreds of years of repeated actions. Japanese internment, nuking Japan twice, slavery, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, like literally all of American foreign policy, redlining, segregation, Jim Crow. That's what? At least 9 instances of America being evil and bad over just the last 80 years. Well, except for slavery. There's a pattern here, man. There's a pattern here. But the difference is I look at these events, analyze them for what they were and what they are, and hope to improve society for the next generation. Conservatives just want to bitch and moan about people like me. They don't give a fuck about society. They don't give a fuck about the future generation. They just want to be the fucking victim. That's not productive.
At worst, there were plenty of bloody, horrendous battles between the Europeans and the Indians. When a Neolithic tribe encounters a more technologically advanced people, the guys with the boom-boom sticks usually win. Columbus is not the issue here and never was. This whole Indigenous Peoples Day charade is about teaching your children to despise Western civilization and anybody who dare defend it. But
no, dude, it's like this is projection. They are preying on people feeling like guilty. I mean, like, no, I'm not guilty. It's like, dude, this was 500 fucking years ago. Shut the fuck up. Who gives a shit? It was 500 years ago. If you're feeling guilt about that, you're fucking weird. Like, we just want to have a conversation about the historical accuracy of these events. Keep in mind, the whole Indigenous Peoples Day is merely aesthetic. The U.S. government still does not give a fuck about the Native Americans. Like, that's another issue with this. Whenever we get Juneteenth, Indigenous Peoples Day, it's great. Okay, it's an acknowledgement, but where is the actual substance, right? Where is the government looking to atone for its mistakes? There's nothing wrong in admitting that you were wrong. Germany paid out reparations for the Holocaust. Why can't the United States government pay out reparations for slavery?
And again, that could just be my Western civ privilege talking.
It's also, Columbus is bad because he's a colonial force. Colonization is not a good thing. Being someone from a foreign land who goes to a new land to claim it as your own is bad. It's stealing. You're stealing from the indigenous people. I think that children should understand that colonialism is bad. We got more, guys. We're not done. So PragerU being Islamophobic, which is bipartisan in the United States. At this point, Florida's Department of Education is receiving more backlash, this time for approving curriculum designed by a conservative nonprofit group. Florida recently became the first state to officially approve PragerU, an unaccredited nonprofit organization, and their newly launched PragerU Kids content to be used in the K-12 public school curricula. The decision allows teachers to use the group's educational content, mainly composed of short video clips, as quote-unquote supplemental material in classrooms. PragerU describes itself as a pro-American voice that provides a, quote, alternative to the dominant left-wing ideology in culture, media, and education. It's named for co-founder, conservative talk show host Dennis Prager. But critics have called it out for promoting anti-immigration theories, downplaying systemic racism, and promoting other right-wing ideas such as the lost cause mythology that claims the Civil War was not fought over slavery. Now, the Council on American Islamic Relations and its Florida chapter are calling on the department to clarify and reject any relationship between the Islamophobic Prager University and public schools. The chapter's executive director, Imam Abdullah Jaber, says there's a clear ideological slant in PragerU's educational content. Quote, a number of PragerU's videos online, they very vividly spread anti-Muslim rhetoric and beyond that, conspiracy theories. In a press release, CARE cited other entities that have documented such rhetoric in PragerU's materials. CARE cites a fact sheet published by the Georgetown University Bridge Initiative in 2020 that lists a number of PragerU videos that promote Islamophobic tropes. One such video features former Dutch politician and Somali-born American activist Ayaan Hirsi Ali. In 2014, Brandeis University withdrew an award from Hirsi Ali after learning she stated, quote, we are at war with Islam. We are at war with Islam. That is a very normal thing to say. Yeah, person is definitely not unhinged. Called for the closing of all Muslim schools in America, urged that Islam be defeated, and claimed there is no moderate Islam. Why is this ridiculous? Because Islam is a fucking religion. To say that there is no moderate Islam is to say that there is no moderate Christianity or no moderate Judaism. Do you know how fucking insane you would sound if you said that? If you said, oh, there's only Christian extremists. Because it's not true. Are there sects of Islam or branches of Islam that are extremist? Yeah, jihadism exists. Wahhabism exists. However, the majority of Muslims are regular ass Muslims who just follow the teachings of the Quran. Very much like how most followers of Christianity are just that. They're just Bible readers who go to church once a week. Not every Christian is a fucking evangelical. PragerU platforming a speaker who once argued the Constitution should be changed to allow for discrimination against Muslims should be a fairly blatant red flag. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Civil liberties to all persons except Muslims. That's what they want. That's what the American government wants the Constitution to say. A spokesperson for the Department of Education said that videos from PragerU Kids had been reviewed by the department and that their content aligns with state education standards guiding civics and government institution. Well, here's the thing. Florida's fucked, all right? So, of course, the Florida Department of Education isn't going to see anything wrong with this. PragerU Kids is no different than many other resources, which can be used as supplemental materials in Florida schools at a district discretion, department spokeswoman Cassandra Palis said in an email. Even when you get a textbook in high school or even like in middle school, it is fairly whitewashed. Definitely. The history curriculum all throughout the United States of America is lying by omission, definitely. But even then, it's not as flagrant. It's not as openly, it doesn't do as much open erasure as PragerU does. It does still provide like the very basic details of certain events that are bad, so that way these children can at least try to understand why things are bad. According to PragerU's website, the group receives an average of 4 million daily video views. Most watchers are under the age of 35, which worries CARE. officials, whether it's college or our younger children in secondary schools. We want them to receive a balanced and accurate education, not propaganda or any indoctrination or anything that promotes prejudice against any minority. About 3.45 million Muslims reside in the U.S., according to the Pew Research Center. About 700,000 Muslims in Florida, making the state home to the second largest Muslim population in the U.S. This article, the original article, continues. Several states, including Alaska, Louisiana, and South Carolina, allow for some type of educational partnership with PragerU. Florida was the first state to approve PragerU content being taught in public schools in 2023. Its biggest partnership yet, though, is with the White House. On July 24th, President Trump signed a bill to cut $1.1 billion in funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which includes PBS and NPR, among 1,500 other local broadcasters. The next day, PragerU and the Department of Ed unveiled an exhibit in the White House's Founders Museum called The Road to Liberty, featuring some AI-generated commentary from the Founding Fathers that referenced conservative rhetoric. Let's watch this, because this is Oh, they deleted it. Oh, no, they didn't. Let's watch this shit. This is so bad, bro. Look at this slop, dude.
I'm John Adams. This is really me talking about how much I love our country.
What? They told the voice actor, sound a little less enthusiastic. Or no, it's probably AI, so. Yeah, I mean, I think, is the voice acting AI? I don't know.
I bet you $5 million that you don't own a bird. But guess what? I own 7. And I can tell you right now that a bird would never just walk into something like a...
Ew, dude, it's so bad. It's so uncanny valley. I'm actually uneasy watching this. This looks like a sleep paralysis demon. This looks like a bad dream. Ugh. Oh my god. Jump scare. This one doesn't even have audio. All right, that's great.
I love 404 Media.
What the fuck, bro?
If you went back in time 200 years and showed me the White House Facebook page, it would definitely not instantly kill me.
These are 404 Media did this. I'm fairly certain. That's something that's also really funny is, yeah, the Founding Fathers would actually detest the White House. They are spitting in the... Well, actually, no, I think Thomas Jefferson would probably be the one Founding Father who loves Donald Trump. I know for a fact that Alexander Hamilton would hate Donald Trump because they're literally pissing on the very document that they worked so bravely to craft and fought so valiantly to uphold. President Trump is especially interested in influencing education and culture in the U.S., similarly targeting the Smithsonian Museums in D.C., including the National Museum for African American History and Culture. His comprehensive review of the museums aims to, quote, aims to ensure alignment with the president's directives to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions. The National Museum of American History removed its references to Trump's 2 first-term impeachments, which led to concerns that the White House forced their removal. Cuckoldry, by the way. Cuckoldry by the American History Museum. The museum said the decision was temporary, but Trump's review of the Smithsonian Museums has also led to the ousting of the National Portrait Gallery director, Kim Saget, who resigned after the president claimed he fired her. We're going to talk about just that as well. President Trump targeting the Smithsonian Museum because they don't believe that slavery was woke. Obviously, guys, slavery is woke. Jim Crow, woke. Everything that is bad and that I don't like is woke. Everything that I do like is Chad and cool.
Trump says he has instructed his lawyers to scour through America's museums to rid them of exhibits he considers woke, specifically citing exhibits on slavery. President Trump targeted...
Slavery being woke has to be one of the most preposterous things that I didn't have on my bingo card this year. We are just fundamentally cooked as a society. I hate to tell you guys this. We are so fucked. There was basically one thing that was universally bad. The consensus is that it was bad, and that was slavery. Like slavery and the Holocaust, although Holocaust isn't U.S. history, those were the 2 things where you could ask 100 people, and virtually all 100 people would say, yeah, that's pretty bad. We're reaching a point where there is a non-zero percentage of the population that is now going to say that slavery was woke and gay.
The Smithsonian Museums, saying they are, quote, out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been.
Again, American slavery was particularly egregious because black people were reduced to property. They had no rights. They had no autonomy. When you compare that to Irish slavery, for Irish enslavement, for example, there was at least a chance that they could get out of slavery. When you compare that to indentured servitude, there was an end to that. You at some point regained your personhood. When you were an African slave, you were just that. For the rest of your life and for the rest of your fucking lineage, you belonged to whatever white person decided to purchase you.
Back in March, the president signed an executive order directing the Smithsonian Institution, which runs more than 20 museums in Washington and elsewhere, to, quote, celebrate American exceptionalism and remove divisive or partisan narratives. Last month, the Smithsonian removed references to Trump in an exhibit on presidential impeachments in the Museum of American History. Mentions of Trump's impeachments were later restored, although with changes. Now he's...
I don't consider myself a history buff. I do tend to read a lot of history, but it's not for enjoyment. It's not exactly for enjoyment because it's quite depressing. But I think it's important to have at least a fundamental understanding of the key events that led us to where we are today. History is not biased, okay? History is just, actually, history is unbiased. Actually, no, history is biased depending on the victor drafts history. All right, it is an old trope, but like it makes sense. There is a lot of whitewashing throughout history, but there are non-whitewashed sources that provide a more accurate understanding of these events. It is crucial to understanding these events to ensure we don't repeat them. When it comes to Trump's impeachment, for example, it is historical to talk about because there had only been one other president to have been impeached, never twice. That is a historical event. That was in an unprecedented instance.
Complaining about exhibits on slavery, although during his first term he visited the Museum of African American History and Culture, which tells the story of slavery and celebrates African American accomplishments, and he called it a, quote, truly great museum done with love.
Because it is a great museum. I love museums. Museums are fucking awesome. Museums are one of the only places that you can go to in the United States and get a relatively unbiased recanting of events. This is why it is so important to have museums that hyper-focus on certain marginalized communities, whether they're natives, whether they're African Americans. You can go to these museums and get a more refined understanding of why people advocate for things such as reparations, even though, that's not really like a mainstream talking point. It's because these museums highlight just how oppressed these communities have been historically. They help the visitors understand systemic racism. In the instance of Native Americans, they help the visitor understand ethnic cleansing. These are important institutions, but they are important because of their unbiased nature. The minute that they become biased, they become partisan, it's over. It's a fucking useless museum.
Not clear whether President Trump actually has the authority to tell any museum, including the museums of the Smithsonian Institution, what to put on display. The American Alliance of Museums, which represents museums across the country, says that no president has the power to impose the kind of review that Trump says he is now ordering. The organization has warned that the president's actions represent a, quote, growing threat of censorship against museums in America. Mary?
Yeah, lots of questions.
Yeah, but okay. That's true. He didn't have the right to tell Columbia how to dictate, or he didn't have the right to tell Columbia what to do with their curriculum. Trump didn't have the right to tell all these law firms how to, he didn't have the right to bribe all of these law firms. He doesn't have the right to fucking do any of that shit, but he's doing it anyway because he wants to be a fucking dictator. This is why the corporations cucking themselves to him, this is why Columbia cucking themselves to him is so dangerous, because it emboldens him to go after less powerful institutions. Columbia, Google, Apple, Facebook, these institutions have the influence and, more importantly, the monetary ability to push back against fascism. They all bent the fucking knee. They're all spineless losers. When we talk about Harvard, it's especially important that Harvard is fighting back against Trump, because not only is Harvard doing it for themselves, they're doing it for other schools that don't have billions of dollars to throw at a legal battle, or hundreds of millions of dollars to throw at a legal battle. They're doing it for museums and other nonprofits and other advocacy groups who don't have the ability to fight back. If Trump is able to tell museums and schools how to fucking conduct their business, it's a wrap. It's over. It's over. He will have effectively controlled the flow, or restricted the flow of information, especially because there is no mainstream media outlet right now that is doing the appropriate pushback. Because guess what? All of the mainstream media outlets, whether they be, well, I'm talking specifically about the liberal media outlets, they're still capitalist. And they're going to do whatever they can to protect capitalism and protect that bottom line, which means, unfortunately, cozying up to fascism.